Greetings everyone. Wow, I can't believe it's like 2 weeks since the last full moon. It's gone really quick, hasn't it? And I'm sure you've all felt the slump in energy. Although we've all slumped, there has been this underlying restless energy as well. So, yeah, things have definitely slowed down, and I'm sure we're all coming back down to earth now. It's been a rough few months, and I think we're all beginning to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. So we've got a new moon coming up on the 22nd of May, and that takes place in Taurus in the true lifetime sky. And the new moon will begin at 18:38 in the GMT time zone, at 1:38 in the EDT time zone, and on the 23rd of May at 3:38 in the AEDT time zone. The new moon will be in trine to both Saturn and Pluto, who are both in retrograde through Sagittarius at the moment, and also the goddess Pallas of strategy and mental agility. And this can cause the Taurus bull to focus on what he already knows and is familiar with. So with this particular trine, it can make it too easy for him to become stuck in his old way of doing things or his way of thinking, where he can create blocks on his own growth. But on a positive level, our new moon, alongside our aspects, can give us a deeper insight into the psychological behaviour of others, as well as like the psychological behaviour of ourselves. And that will help us to develop a greater understanding and awareness of human behaviour. And if we are able to use this energy wisely and confidently, it can really help those who are feeling a sense of entrapment to break free of any restrictions, either created by themselves or by another. There is a strong psychological influence with this new moon's energy and a strong sense of self. So while some may gain greater insights and awarenesses, others may become fixated and stuck in the past or in their current circumstances. But on the whole, this new moon is a good time to express ourselves creatively, and it will also help to release any pent-up frustration that we've become entangled in since the last full moon. Boredom could also be another energy felt during this time. But going back to the positive aspects, this is all about breaking patterns that have kept us stuck in repetitive cycles that, does restrict our soul's growth. For the last year, the goddess Juno has been undergoing quite a transformation when it comes to loyalty and commitment. So she can come to the realization that loyalty and commitment has to be a two-way street for her to gain the mutual respect and recognition that she wants. So in mythology, Juno was the wife of Jupiter, who was only loyal to himself and his own mission, and very rarely took her feelings into consideration, putting his own desires first, and not recognising that it was her loyalty and unconditional love that fed him the confidence and the feel-good vibes that he thrived on. Jupiter had a wandering eye and a roaming heart, and took off for broader horizons without any thought or consideration for her welfare. In astrology, the goddess Juno represents the partner who is committed regardless of being undervalued. whereas the Black Moon Lilith, who has been opposing her off and on now for quite some time, is the complete opposite, being the independent woman that doesn't tolerate any form of disrespect against her freedom of will, even to the point of her own detriment. So this is definitely a time for us to develop our own moral codes, but forming them from a place of unconditional love and higher consciousness. When it comes to our intimate relationships, it's all about us developing equality and mutual respect within our relationships, breaking free of the man-made laws that have been built on the patriarchal concept, and that has been going on for generations and has been etched genetically into our souls. Last year the moon's nodes were very active and spent most of the time in square to Uranus. Actually it was a T-square that was being formed. So in astrology, the moon's nodes represent our destiny and what we must aim to achieve in this life before we leave the earth. And that's on a personal level. Collectively, the nodes are all about trends and social awareness. Uranus entered into Aries in 2018 in the true lifetime sky, and the mission of this particular square was to shape things up and kickstart the mass awakening process that has been going on ever since. And, will continue to do so up until 2024, when Uranus enters into Taurus. The T-square with the nodes and Uranus were also preparing us for the major conjunctions that have been taking place throughout this year between Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto. And they are creating some big shifts and changes in how we will be living our lives in the future. Depression and mental health statistically has been on the rise since 2010. And when I was researching Neptune's transits last year, I kind of realised that Neptune had entered into the sign of Aquarius in early 2011, which makes a lot of sense because Neptune rules Pisces and also the first house in the true lifetime sky, which is all about the self and self-image, whilst Aquarius rules the 13th house, which is the house of the hidden, institutions, and all that locked away stuff. Neptune is also the planet of spiritual transcendence, whilst Aquarius is a sign of higher consciousness. So this contact in the 13th house is major when it comes to the spiritual evolution and the union of the soul with the higher self. But in its negative aspect, can be detrimental to the collective's mental and emotional health. Neptune is highly psychic and spiritual on one level, but in its shadow can be over-empathic and a fantasizer, whilst Aquarius's energy can be highly telepathic and unique, but in its shadow can be over-eccentric and paranoid. So for Neptune to reach a healthy, higher spiritual awareness, he must first learn to form boundaries, especially in Aquarius's highly eccentric and emotionally detached environment. This combination is really a make or break when it comes to our spiritual evolution and higher consciousness, and when it comes to developing unconditional love with boundaries and recognizing our own divinity. Neptune will enter into his own sign of Pisces in 2022, and I feel it will be at that point where the concept of oneness will be better understood. Mercury will enter into the shadow of his upcoming retrograde on the 2nd of June and will begin his retrograde mode on the 18th of June. You know, the shadow of Mercury's retrograde is often just as strong as his actual retrograde motion. So as usual, I suggest that we avoid signing any contracts or buying any electrical or mechanical equipment. Gemini is the sign that rules the media, communications, and inventiveness. And as Mercury goes into shadow in his own sign, by the way, just like the other planets are retrograding in their own signs, which is definitely not common, he will also be in conjunction to the North Node and the goddess Vesta of the sacred fire. So it looks like a lot of information and realizations for many will be reached under these aspects. And if we can process that information clearly, we will be able to make a lot of sense of certain situations of either the past or the present. You know, it will help us to wrap things up, you know, those things that have been left hanging. You know, this will also be a good time for research or study. And this particular Mercury retrograde will help us to adapt to the changes that are taking place. It will also give us an opportunity to expand our minds and our intellect, especially if we have become fixated or obsessive in our thoughts or way of being. For some, this is a time to let bygones be bygones and find a positive outlet to release any pent-up anger or frustration. And I recommend that we make use of this new moon's energy to get into alignment with our sense of peace and goodwill before the lunar eclipse takes place on the 5th of June, and that will take place in the sign of Ophiuchus, which does suggest that this energy is going to be very deep and intense for some and highly transformative for others. Stay in peace. Much love.